Hello guys, welcome to Product Tank today's session for B2B versus B2C product design. We are live today with Kamax Gangani and hope you are safe and sound at your place. We are going to start the session right now and thanks for joining in. Product Tank is actually started 8 years ago when around the world they started at few places, and this comes under the umbrella of Mind the Product team. And now after that long journey, we have grown up a lot, and now we are Kamax, we are live now, and I am sharing the introduction slides and then Product Tank Delhi is the product community of product managers where we engage face to face, and but now due to coronavirus, now we are going it via YouTube session, and here you can interact with the experts and the team leads, and they can ask here, you can ask your query as well after the session. Right after the session we will take your question answer as well. If you have any questions, you are welcome to share the questions on YouTube live itself, and Kamax will be more than happy to answer for your.
So thank you, Anshul. Thank you, Dhruv, and everyone for organizing this. Thank you, everyone, for joining this. And I hope everyone is keeping safe in this tough times. And you are all safeguarding yourself and doing well in your careers and jobs. So today, the topic that I've taken is designing an enterprise product versus designing a commercial product. So when we say an enterprise product, what are the examples that I want to quote? A fire alarm panel console for a building management system where security guards or building management system guys will be using a fire alarm console to evacuate people who are affected during the fire. User interface for a thermostat. Temperature management application for a boiler. So all the examples which I'm quoting, I worked in design of these products. So whether entire design or some of the module designs. Digital interface for a cockpit. Ebook store for selling bulk licenses. So there'll be publishing houses who will have these ebook stores just for selling bulk licenses and book collections to colleges and universities. Ticket management system for field executives for a wind farm. So let's say there's a large wind farm where a lot of executives are there on field. Something happens, some casualty happens, or things like that. They have a ticket management system. That can be one example of that. Another example can be sales tracking app for a large company. Company who is selling some products at large scale, and they want to like monitor. They want to monitor their sales and sales teams and their performances. They will use some kind of an enterprise product. So these are some of the enterprise product examples. Some examples of consumer, commercial, or customer facing products: food delivery app, or a ride sharing product, or a social networking, or a dating website, or a gaming or entertainment related product. So when I say enterprise versus consumer product, right? These are the analogies that we will go through, and these are the analogies that I've drawn. Enterprise versus commercial, enterprise versus consumer product. So when we say enterprise versus commercial, these are the analogies that we can draw. There is no direct comparison here. So let's say B2B versus B2B, internal versus external product in a large setup, large product versus a small product, right? So I already gave some of the examples. Now this is not a black and white comparison. There is no direct comparison. You may disagree or agree with me at some points, and will be up for a healthy discussion at the end when we have some points to discuss. So without wasting time, I'll directly go to some points that differentiates designing for a commercial app from an enterprise app, or I would say an enterprise app from a commercial setup. So I'll be talking mostly about enterprise points, where what are the things that goes into designing enterprise product which differs from a consumer setup or commercial setup. Sometimes they may overlap. Sometimes there'll be some part which will be used in commercial products. Sometimes it will be completely different. So let's start. So number one difference here, the room for assumptions is very less, because sometimes you'll be dealing with some large applications, some large products where you cannot go back, right? Your your users or the task of the users are so will be so intense that you cannot assume, because if you assume, you can it can like result into loss of millions and billions dollars. For example, one of the example I quoted for enterprise product was a boiler management temperature for the boiler temperature management system for the boiler. So there, keeping track of the workflow is very important. Your where you can do things in 3 clicks, you cannot have 4 clicks. So it's very important that you do not leave any room for assumptions. I'll give you an example. So we were designing assignment writing application for a publishing house. So this assignment writing application was replacing Google Docs of the world and Microsoft Docs of the world. The teachers will be designing the assignments and students will be writing the assignments. So I will talk about a small feature here. This big column that you see is of a writing editor, let's say a Word or things like that. And this sidebar is for the comments. So these comments can be made by your peers, or these comments can be made by your instructors. So let's say these comments are made by your peers, the peers of the students who are writing anything in the assignment application. So let's say there is a small sidebar where one assignment paper can have 40 to 45 comments, right? So when you have 40 to 45 comments, sometimes the comments can be very long and the instructor won't be reading all the comments, or especially the long comments. So these were the hypotheses which we were going through and designing our initial sketches and initial wireframes. So this is what we designed, like all the comments will have some snippet of the comment, and then you will see read more. This is how we designed. And we took it to the users. And when we took it to the users, these instructors who will teach or who will use these applications to read comments, these were some of their reactions. That I would like to read all the comments, no matter how long they are. So when a nomenclature, when we design something, would be that when we have long paragraphs or things like that, we cut them. We cut them after some 3 or 4 lines, and then show read more, in order to accommodate more stuff, more content, and also not to bore the user into reading long. But here, the things that we learned or understood after this usability testing session were kind of eye openers for us. Another person said, "I'm okay with long scrolls, but don't make me click." So they were okay. So one thing we found out was they were not okay with clicking. All the instructors who have been reading a lot and all those things, they were not okay with clicking read more all the time. They were okay with spending a lot of time in reading all the comments, and even if they're not interested in reading all the comments, they are okay scrolling, but they were not okay clicking on more button, right? So these were some eye openers that we found out. And the result is this: we made all the comments long. No matter how long they were, we showed all the comments. So what is that we can learn from here? You have very less room for guesswork. You cannot afford to be wrong. You have to research more and test more. And validation is the key. So when you are dealing with an enterprise product, or I would say any product, validation is very important. If you are not validating with your real users at the early stage. So when the last example that I gave, we were testing at the stage of sketching. We were not testing as the phase of visual design or after the coding has been done. We were testing at the sketching level. So as early you test with the real users, it is good for you. So your your designs or development will not have a snowball effect. You can come back anytime and change your sketches, and then go for other phases like detailed wireframes and visual designs and code and things like that. More traditional approach in design. So when you're designing a product, an enterprise product, your approach has to be little traditional. Why? Because there'll be some enterprise product which will be used by in-house users. So when you are designing something for in-house users, you don't need those effects and delights, or you don't need those advanced plugins or things like that. You can go ahead with functional stuff. Sometimes you'll be designing at a very large scale. So when you are designing at a very large scale, when you do experiments, when you are, let's say, using some plugin or using some feature which is yet in testing phase. So let's say you're 2000 users, 2000 enterprise users, everyone will be failing, everyone will not able to perform their tasks, especially when we talk about some serious intense applications or products. Some examples which I already gave. When you are dealing with such large products, you cannot have something which breaks, right? And then cannot afford to experiment. One example, this is one migration app. So what this product does is it migrates a large scale enterprise product or software into a new version. So this migration, since migration of translating an old version into a new version takes close to 2 years. So imagine the size of the application or size of the real product. It's not, I would say, not good to assume at this level. Your user experience methodologies will be at work here. All the methodologies that you wanted to follow, all the research you wanted to do, you'll be able to do it at this level, because at this level, when you have applications or products at this scale, you cannot afford to take chances. What can we learn from here? Your design cycles have to be will be mostly very long in enterprise setup. So if you are a designer who enjoy designing large applications or large products, you designing for enterprise products, you cannot ship every day. So you cannot say, okay, this is one very good feature, I've introduced some small notification system which I want to like ship today. No, you will have large plans. One design phase can be like 1 year long or 2 year long. In that case, all the cycles are very tight. Whatever you will be shipping after 6 months will be ready. That plan will be ready today. It's not very easy to go back, like I just mentioned. One more point. Speed here is more important than delight. When I say speed, it is not speed of the design task. It is of the speed is of the task that the user is performing. So let's say, for example, you are designing a product which is an example of the boiler management system, the temperature management system for the boiler. Here, it's very important to perform a task. Let's say you are maintaining the temperature. Even let's say you miss by 5 seconds or 10 seconds, it can turn into disaster, right? At the time, it's very important that you have that your product is limited to functional features, right? Or let's say you have a product which is used by 2,000 of your employees on daily basis. Let's say a stock market application, for example. When you introduce a lot of delights, let's say you have things flying from here and there, or you are introducing some new visual elements or some things like that. 2 seconds wasted by a person or your employee or anyone's employee who is using this application day in and day out, or let's say every hour basis or every minute basis. Imagine 2 seconds loss in a task, multiplied by 8 hours, multiplied by 200 or 2,000, whatever employees you have, right? So in that case, the time, if you are wasting, or if you're spending any time in introducing any delight or introducing any, let's say, animations or motion design or things like that, which is like extending users task task performance. In that case, it can result into revenue loss. So here, some of the workflows can be very intense. At that juncture, you're introducing delight at the cost of the user experience or at the cost of the task performance will be very dangerous. So let's say this is a product where the IT department of a company will use to onboard a user. So let's say I assign a computer to a employee, which I'm doing like on daily basis. 5 times I'm using this product. Let's say I've just assigned one iPhone or I just assigned one computer to an employee, and it tells me, okay, hey, you have done some nice work, good job, congratulations for assigning this iPad or computer to this person and not. The user is not wanting it, right? I've been doing the task 10 times a day. You cannot congratulate me, or you cannot. You cannot congratulate me every time I assign something to a computer to someone, right? So this is one kind of a delight time, one example of a delight I've given, that you will want to restrain yourself from. Here's one more application example. This is a plant management system. It shows the health of your plant. Even at this level, see the amount of density that is there in the screen. At that time, let's say if I click on this and you show some good animation here, and if I'm going to click on all 10 or 20 rows here, is going to again is not going to I'm not going to find it appealing after 2 days, right? So let's say some very good animation is there which I'm seeing 10 times a day, 20 times a day. After sometimes I'm going to ignore it. Let me give you an example. Let's say you read newspapers every day. So we have this Times of India in big fonts written in the title. How many times we read Times of India, right? When we subscribe to the paper, let's say 2 times, 3 times, but after that, we know Times of India is written there. So we tend to ignore it. So people who use some kind of products every hourly basis, daily basis, multiple times in a day, they will ignore some things, right? And when you invest in a delight, or when you invest in some kind of a feature or effect which is not so important for the user, or which is something that the user is likely to ignore, you should refrain from using those kind of features. What you should do here: use delight to enhance functionality, to improve the user's workflow, and for faster task completion. One example I would quote here. So in around 2012, when we were designing a turbo dashboard, a turbocharger dashboard. So people who are making turbochargers, a dashboard for them. So there was a search engine there. So when designing the search engine, we realized that one of the users for this application will be people who are designing or who are fiddling with the parts of the turbocharger. So their hands will be dirty all the time, right? So and they'll be playing with the parts, and they would want to search for a part. So they will have to go to the restroom, clean their hands, wash their hands, come back, use their computer, search for a part, and then get their hands dirty again. So when we realize, I'm talking about 2012, when at that time we introduced something called voice search. At the time, voice search was very, I would say, a very rare functionality that was used. So we introduced voice search at the time, which was a delight for the customer. That okay, I can do voice search now. It can be fancy, but at the same time, it enhanced the user's tasks. It enhanced the performance of the user to a next level, where they didn't have to wash their hand all the time. They can keep fiddling with the part. The designers can keep fiddling with the part. At the same time, they can say, hey, search for this part number 1234, and then it will give the availability to the designer. So this is one example where you can use delight. You can use this kind of good features in terms of enhancing the customers or the users workflow. Another point: when you are playing or when you are designing at enterprise level, handoff, the handoff between designers to developers has to be very precise, because the teams can be very large. For example, in a setup where I'm working right now, the development team, one development team consists of 20 developers, and there can be such 3 or 4 teams where so many people will be looking at your design on daily basis. And at this level, you cannot leave any room for assumptions. For example, I'd give an example. So we were designing a page, and in that page there was a sidebar, a filter bar, and there was a main column where we are showing the search results. So when the filter bar was there, and when we are going responsive, so what the developer did was he was he was stretching the filter also, or kind of making the filter liquid at the same time. The other column is the search result column is expanding. At that time, when I told him that I don't want the filter to be expanded, I want the search results only to be expanded, so we can have more content in the search results. At the same time, the filter can stay as it is, so we have more space for the search results to be shown. But by the time I say that, the development was already done. Everything was already done. So what I learned from this is, every time I used to give designs, I used to like hand over my designs to the developers. After that time, I used to mark those things, that this is a fixed part, this is a flexible part, this can be moved, this cannot move, and things like that. So that's very important, that you, each and every point is something that you communicate properly, and it has to be recorded. I was designing a page, which was again showing the search results of the book search, right? So I changed the button. I moved the button 10 pixels away, 10 to 20 pixels away, and the QAs logged the bug. And because of the assumption that people will understand that. But what I did was I uploaded to Zeppelin. These guys took the code and then designed it. When I pushed the changes again, at that time I was under assumption that they will just take it and they will develop it. But there was a huge chaos which came out of that. So and everyone like was like, okay, hey, why this change? The developers and QA guys started fighting with each other, saying, okay, no, this is how I received it. So QA said, no, this is what it is looking right now, and things like that. After that, they came back to me, and I realized their problem. So at that time, we decided that each and every change, so let's say even that 10 pixel 15 pixel shift that I made to the design of the button, I went and told the business analyst or someone who was writing the user story that, okay, please mention in the user story, and I will upload in the Zeppelin again. Please mention in the user story also that now this is the change. And then they estimated the change again and they developed it. So it's very important at this large scale, when you're working at with very large teams, mostly development teams, it's very important to record each and every changes that you're making in your design. And it's very important to keep all the teams in sync, whatever you're doing. So let's say in that example that I gave of button, I told the BA guys and I told the person who was writing the user story, I kept them involved. They kept the developers involved. So it's very important for you to inform these changes or inform everything that you are doing to all the teams. So for example, we have a stakeholder called marketing people in our setup. We have editorial people. So every word we change, right? For example, instead of saying the encyclopedia, when we say encyclopedia, that also affects a lot. So that approval also we have to take from marketing team, or we have marketing team give us those kind of content. So it's very important, every change that you're making or anything that you're doing, keep all the parties, all the stakeholders involved. Yes. So which brings me to the same point that I was just talking about. In a large setup, you will have a lot of stakeholders. I'll give you example of my setup. So in this setup, in the current setup that I have, after I design, after I design something, it has to be approved by the BA or it has to be signed off by the BAs. And then it has to be taken to the product manager and the stakeholder one, which can be marketing person, which stakeholder two can be, which can be an editorial person or things like that, and the delivery lead and the dev lead and all the development teams. So you can see the amount of iteration we have to do. So when you are dealing with a large setup, or when you have a lot of stakeholders, you will have to deal with a lot of iterations. Even after the things, the product is developed, you will have design review, you will have a product review, you have a stakeholder review, you have multiple reviews. Even at that stage, you will have to be ready with iterations. They will say, okay, no, I think instead of this, you can write this sentence. Or developers will say, okay, no, we cannot have this plugin. We have to use this plugin, which will have to change, which will change your design a bit, and those things like that. You have to be ready for that. And like I said, you cannot have last minute changes as well. And everyone who were with you can go against you when you are designing. So it's like example that I give. A BA will say, okay, no, this we cannot do because it is not supported by the business. Or a stakeholder, or let's say a marketing person will say, no, my users don't understand this term. Or a delivery lead will say, okay, no, this thing that you have designed, which it will cost me one more sprint. Let's not do it, right? So there will be a lot of people will become a roadblocker for you. So what are the takeaways here? Patience is very important here. Overall, I would say a real skill of a designer is keeping patience. Patience is very important when people ask you to do, or for any reason, for business reason, for constraint reason, for development reason, for any reason, you have to change your design 25 times, 30 times, 100 times. You should not shy away from doing that. At the same time, you should not be lazy. You should not be lazy out on that. Uh, Patience is very important. You cannot freak out, because it can work against you in the sense people will stop sharing their concerns with you. They will let you go the way you are going, and it can turn into a disaster. So people who are not raising concerns to you at this time will raise them later when you ship the product. And also, you will not get realistic feedback, right? So patience is very, very important. And one more important thing, every designer has to inculcate a skill, or I would say a habit that every designer has to inculcate, is defending design decisions. So all the stakeholders that I just showed will be taking design decisions with you, will be suggesting you something, will tell you, okay, no, instead of this decision, we'll take this decision. Sometimes they'll be just assuming, sometimes they'll be right, sometimes they'll be sometimes it'll just be their creative thoughts, sometimes they'll be saying scientifically, right? So you have to keep everything into consideration, but you cannot take everyone's feedback, right? So while taking design decisions or UX, as I always say, that UX is everyone's job. But where a UX designer can differentiate himself or becomes unique in the entire setup or ecosystem of a product life cycle, is there is that he or she can defend design decisions for the sake of the user. That's a very important skill for a designer to have. Constraints. So when you are in a large setup, there can be many constraints you'll be dealing with. That constraint. So let's say, for example, your setup is this. Let's say for designing a feature or designing a workflow, you have a front end where you have a database group of three database groups. You have a development team, you have a delivery team, you have a product management team, project management, program management. You have stakeholder, you have the different kind of stakeholders, you have marketing team. At this time, anyone can restrict you at any point. Like some examples that I just gave, that a marketing person will come and say, no, we cannot use this line. let's change it. So anyone can come and constrain and put constraint on your design decisions. So it's very important to understand those constraints beforehand while you are designing and design and then design and take those design decisions. Otherwise, it can turn into a snowball effect later. One very big advantage when you will be designing a lot of enterprise products is that is it will be very easy to find users. So I have not talked about any commercial setup till now. I will talk about some points now. So let's say a food delivery app, right? Uh, Users can be anyone. It can be a college goer or it can be someone who is 60 years old. It's very hard. Or let's say there's a flight booking uh, website or a product or an application. It's not very easy to say, okay, this guy is my user or this guy is my user. Almost everyone is a user. But when you're designing something for the enterprise at enterprise level, most of the times your users will be definite. So let's say some of the examples that I gave. A fire alarm panel for a building management system. You know your users. Your users can be a security guard. Your users can be a manager at the building management system level. Your user can be a supervisor at BMS. And let's say you are designing. I gave an example of a turbocharger, a turbo search engine dashboard. So here, my stakeholder can be a a project manager. It can be a part designer. It can be IT and admin. So I know these three are my users. These three are my main users. So at the time, so what will happen is your users will be either limited or they'll be known users. You will be knowing those users. Those users sit with you, right? So let's say you are designing an application which your employees or your company people only will use to sell something outside, right? So your users are sitting with you. Like for example, we have an HRMS system, our own product, for which testing becomes very easy because every employee in our company can be a user. The HR department in our company can be our user, right? So many of the times you will be dealing with a known set of users. And one more important, very, very important thing here will be that those people will have a similar skill set or some specialized kind of a skill set. Like, for example, let's say you are designing for a team who is deployed in a field of a wind farm. At this level, you know that a set of users is limited. At the same time, they are specialized set of users. So what are the takeaways here? So it is okay to use jargons. It is okay to use technical terminologies that they can relate with, right? So the example that I give of these field engineers, you can talk to them in their manners. Your application or your interface can have those kind of terminologies or those kind of jargons that they'll be using every day in their field. They'll feel at home. At the same time, they can relate with the workflow better. Accessibility is very, very important. So when you are dealing with, like I said, a specialized set of users, you do not want to miss any of the user out, because sometimes your user can be limited. Let's say you're building a very large application, but your users will be only 2,000. In that 2,000 user base, even if 2 people or 3 people have, let's say, a partial disability or full disability, in terms of, let's say, any disability of the body, they will be restrained or they'll be refrained. They will refrain from using your system. They'll be deprived of using the system that we have designed. So it's very important that we design for accessibility as well. So more than accessibility, I would say design for inclusiveness, right? So when we say accessibility, we are mostly talking about permanent disability. But let's say, for example, I am a user who cannot use mouse, right? Or my one hand is always my one hand is always busy with something and the other hand is on keyboard, so I cannot use mouse. You have to design for keyboard accessibility at that time. Your keyboard navigation has to be very robust, very accurate. Or let's say I have a temporary disability. Let's say I met with an accident, or my hand, one hand is not working at the time. Keyboard one hand usage is very important for me, or that's the only way I can interact with the system. So keyboard accessibility is very important. Or you're also designing for a permanent disabled person, which is again in that 2,000 or 3,000 limited set of users. That user is available there. So it's very important that you take care of accessibility when you're designing for enterprise level. Yes, a very important point. No direct relationship with the revenue, right? So when you're working with the, let's say, food delivery app, or when you're working with, let's say, flight booking app, or things like that, your marketing team or your product team or your growth team, for example, they will always bombard you. Okay, our CAC, customer acquisition cost, is 200 rupees. It has come down to 199 today, or it is, let's say, it is increased by 250 and things like that. You'll be always pressurized by that. Whether you call it good or bad, you'll always have to be wary of that fact. But when you are designing for large enterprises, you'll not be I would say you'll not be bumped into you'll not bump into these kind of things at daily basis. Nobody will walk you to and say, hey, today our revenue has gone down by this amount. We have to introduce this feature, things like that. No, everything is planned. Everything is planned for longer term. So when you're designing for enterprises, these words of profit and loss, revenue stream, customer acquisition cost will be talked at very high level. You will not be introduced at that level. But it's very important that you think of a solution that can have impact on a business or cost, that can impact business. So let's say, for example, you are proposing something which takes a lot of time or a lot of efforts to build, but your user base is only 2,000, or your user base is, let's say, even lesser than that. But the application cost or software cost or product cost can go through the roof because of so many people involved, or because so many database we have to fiddle with, so many data points we have to bring in. There will be a lot of people and a lot of efforts will be spent. So at the time, you will have to propose some reusage. Let's say you will say, okay, instead of introducing ABCD filter here, I will have only search. I will have only plain search here, which can just filter, which you are reusing from a search engine that you have already built, right? And yeah, this is one real example that I've just dealt with a few days ago. So developers will come back and say, hey, okay, well, I mean, designing this system, which is like a new development for us, and the usage of that. So it's very important for you to know that what will be the frequency of usage of that feature that you're talking about or that you're proposing, right? The feature that I was talking about will not be used by much people. They'll be directly knowing which book or collection they are searching for. They'll directly come here and directly type in the search bar. So at the time, introducing that A to Z filter was not very cost effective, and developing that would take a lot of efforts in terms of revenue. So if I knew that earlier, I wouldn't have proposed that, right? So it's very important for you to understand these things, which can impact the business, which can impact the revenue. And the last point, confidentiality. So if you have seen my entire presentation, I've not taken names of any companies that I've designed for. I've not taken I've not shown you many screens. Whatever screens, 2 or 3 screens I just showed you were example screens, were sample screens, or there were screens where I've changed the data points. Because when you are designing at enterprise level, or where you are designing at a level where if a customer copies you, he can earn his revenue can increase by a lot of dollars. in millions or billions. At the time, keeping confidentiality will be very important. So when you're working in a large setup, most of the times there'll be NDA in place. There'll be confidentiality agreement in place, and also you will want to keep things confidential for your company's sake, or your for products, or for your product's sake. So you cannot brag about your work, that okay, this is the design that I've done, please give me your feedback and things like that. You cannot go out and you cannot put up your designs on LinkedIn and say, hey, please comment on this, please give me feedback. You have to deal with a very close set of users, or a very close set of designers that you have, or very close set of product people, or your team that you have. You cannot go to a large audience, you cannot go to public. uh, and you cannot have portfolio. Even if your portfolio has to be very, very secret. You can show your work only. So let's say you're going for an interview or things, you cannot show your work beforehand, because the company can sue you for a lot of amount if your work goes public. But at least what you can do is you can keep your work with yourself, and when you go for an interview, or let's say forget interview, some other things, let's say you are just showing your work to someone, you can only show that in a personal chat, or you can show in a face to face chat, or things like that. So so there's a thing with designing for large or enterprise products or companies, that you cannot talk about, or you cannot show your work publicly. With that, I've come to an end. Any questions, any comments, any feedback you have, please feel free to shoot.